Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Knicks would not go quietly into that good New York night. Also, can Indiana get back to its identity to get to the NBA Finals? And which receiver will top NFC and AFC in yards?
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The New York Knicks played like their playoff lives depended on it at Madison Square Garden. And that's because they did. The Knicks get a 111-94 win to get this series to 3-2. They're still behind the Indiana Pacers. Alex Wolf from Locked On Knicks joins me now. And Alex, this is the first time the Pacers have failed to get 100 points in this postseason. What was the defensive difference for the Knicks in this one?
Yeah, also the first time that they failed to close a series in 5, right? So there's first time for everything, I suppose. For the Knicks on defense, I mean, Haliburton, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't totally know how to explain that one. I mean, he was just out of it in this game. I can't fully, a guy who had 30, 15 and 35,
the game of his life,
12, whatever the other day. I don't know what was going on with him. And the fact that he sat for like 10 straight minutes between the third and fourth quarter was kind of bizarre to me. But in terms of how the Knicks approached everybody else, I mean, it was a matter of trusting their switches a little more, trusting their defenders a little more, which has worked for them. I mean, I was just talking to Gavin about it on our show the other day, but like, that's what essentially won them the series against the Celtics, against the defending champions who have shooters galore, and everything else was that they trusted Brunson to just live on an island and defend someone one-on-one. They trusted Cat to do the same. They trusted them to do that in some key moments in this game. And on top of that, I mean, you have the deeper bench kind of finding their footing now. I mean, Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright and even Precious Achiuwa, who came in for, in my opinion, a pretty dynamite 6 minutes in this game. Tibbs, to his credit, the guy, I mean, we were certainly looking at this, on our show being like, it's going to be tough with like a 7-man rotation going into this series. How are you going to pull this off? And yet Tibbs has reached into the bag of tricks and all of a sudden said, you know what? DeLon Wright can play 10 minutes a game. Landry Shamet can play 15. We'll bring in Precious for 6-7 minutes if we have to, if they're doing hack a Mitch or whatever, which is what led to that today. He did a good job, I think, of staggering Mitchell Robinson's minutes as well to allow him to operate in bursts, and be at his energetic best at the beginning of halves, which made a huge difference. I mean, it really just comes down to execution at the end of the day. I think that they were staying tighter over screens. They were just sticking to their man better. But when switches happened, they were attacking them tenaciously. There was none of this like weird, like hedging, not hedging. Like they couldn't seem to make up their mind what the defensive scheme was at certain points in the series, and it burned them. So it was mostly, like I said, it just came down to execution and just guys, as you said, playing for their playoff lives and succeeding at it.
Yeah, you can't fake the desperation part of it, right? We were talking to Ben Beacon from Locked On Wolves about that series, and that was a mismatch in a way that this series has not been. But I asked him, is this a matchup problem or is this a roster problem? And he was like, oh, the roster is just not good enough. The Knicks spent the offseason upgrading the roster. That was supposed to be the whole point of getting Karl Anthony Towns, of making the Mikal Bridges trade. But also you can run into a matchup in the playoffs that just is tough. Is this more the matchup to your mind or some intractable problem with the roster?
I think it's more the matchup. And look, I don't want to belabor the point because I don't think that certainly this game was not the one to try to make this point, because I think he actually did solid. But there's been points in this series, especially where Tibbs's flaws have shown through in terms of how he manages a rotation, in terms of what buttons he pushes when. It's a little bizarre sometimes, like how he manages his rotation, who he decides to keep out there for long stretches. I mean, Gavin and I were extremely vocal about, I think game 4 was probably Josh Hart's worst game of this series, like by a long stretch. And yet he played like a million minutes straight and was on the floor to close the game, and it didn't make any sense. And granted, he was no perfect player in this game either, but I think that Tibbs rightfully left him in this case, because he did, like, after making a couple boneheaded plays, hit some big layups. So it was like waited just long enough in this one. But I don't think it's a talent issue. I think it's just the Pacers are really good. I mean, they're a really well coached team. They're talented in their own right. I think that they have, I would probably say, about as good of a 1-2 punch most nights as the Knicks do with Halliburton and Siakam, as the Knicks do with Brunson and Towns. And then it just comes down to the role player depth. We've seen ups and downs for like Mikal Bridges this year for the Knicks, for Josh Hart, for OG Anunoby. And, certainly none of them were infallible even in this game. Like OG had kind of a tough shooting game, whatever. But I don't think it's a talent issue. I think that the Knicks, if they, let's say that this ends in game 6 and they go home, I don't think that you look at it and say, well, the roster definitely wasn't good enough, because I think the roster was pretty damn good. They knocked out the Celtics on merit. I mean, just on pure talent and force of will, I think, in that series, and then took this series, now to at least 6 games. I think you look at finishing pieces, you take a real long, hard look in the mirror, and you say, if it ends in the next game or anything short of a championship, if I'm being completely honest, you take a long, hard look in the mirror and you say, is Tibbs for sure the coach that can take this team to a championship? Or is this a Mark Jackson situation with Golden State, where he's the coach before the coach? You bring someone in who can approach things a little differently, run a more modern, offense and defensive scheme. But for now, they scrap. And the one good thing about Tibbs and the way that he coaches is he always has his teams in games right up until the last possession for the most part, except for rare instances where they get blown out. But like, it's, for the most part, especially when the playoffs come, you can count on they're at least going to be in it in the final 5 minutes or so and have a chance to win. It's just sometimes those decisions leave a little bit to be desired. But again, not taking anything away from him on this day, that's more bigger picture stuff. But I thought he actually coached a really fantastic game in this one and pushed a lot of the right buttons in terms of the rotations and getting winning combinations out there.
You can stay up to date all year on the New York Knicks by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Knicks on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, the Pacers are heading back to Indiana. A bit rattled, though. Have they been rattled this whole postseason? Hasn't seemed like it. Before we get to that, a new postseason model is being discussed for college football. Again, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Monarch Money makes managing with your partner smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. College football's playoff is speeding toward expansion yet again. This week, SEC meetings push momentum for a 16-team college football playoff with 5 automatic bids and 11 at-large spots by 2026. Key questions do remain, like how much strength of schedule will matter and whether the SEC moves to a 9-game slate. The clock's ticking, and the sport's biggest voices will meet next month to shape what could be the biggest postseason shakeup in college football history. The Stars tried to avoid an early flameout in the West Finals.
Well, the first 8 minutes could not have gone any worse for the Dallas Stars and head coach Pete DeBoer. Maverick Bork, who checked back into the lineup for the first time since Game 4 against Colorado, takes a high-sticking minor penalty, 1 minute and 47 seconds in, and then it's Corey Perry, who was left all alone in front on the power play set up by Connor McDavid, is able to deflect one past Jake Ottinger, and the Oilers were off and running, and it just snowballed from there. About 6 minutes later, it's Matthias Janmark on a breakaway. The Stars got caught in a really bad change. Great pass by Wallman. Then Janmark is able to bury it through the legs of Ottinger for a 2-0 Edmonton lead, and everybody in the building was shocked. Everybody on the Stars bench was shocked, and head coach Pete DeBoer made a ballsy decision to pull Jake Ottinger, and we have to stay on that topic for a bit. Look, that is not a move I would have made as the Dallas Stars head coach. That is a very, very ballsy play by Pete DeBoer, and I would not have made that decision, but I liked it. I really did.
Phillies split a doubleheader against the Braves.
They took 2 or 3 from the Braves. I think most people are happy that they won the series from the Braves, so we don't have to go on and question the validity of a 9-game winning streak or winning 9 of your last 10 series. They took 2 or 3 against the Braves. I also think most people realize the Braves now are not the same team that started out 1-8 to begin the 2025 season. But the Phillies still had the Braves right where they wanted them to try to complete the sweep. It's out Philly. You had Zach Wheeler taking on Chris Sale. You're supposed to get a pitcher's duel, and Wheeler, unfortunately, was the first and really the only of the 2 to crack in this game. A 4-run 4th inning courtesy to Austin Riley, who got up in the count on Zach Wheeler 3-0 before he put a 2-run double into the outfield. And then, of course, Ozzie Albies on the very next pitch tattooed a 2-run home run to give the Phillies, unfortunately, a 4-0 deficit. Wheeler to be chased after 5 1/3 and 107 pitches as he drops to 6-2 on the season.
The Pacers couldn't close out the New York Knicks in Game 5 at Madison Square Garden. Tony East was at MSG. He breaks down what went wrong for Indiana.
To dive into, for the first time, the Pacers in this postseason will be playing a Game 6. They are fortunate that it will be at home, and they are fortunate that they are the team of response and have been very good at responding to these moments. They have not lost 2 games in a row since March 10th, and they need to respond because they stunk. They flat out stunk, and they know it, right? It doesn't take a genius to look at a 111, excuse me, I almost just said 111 to 94 scoreline. See everything that went wrong for the Pacers. Benedict Mathurin, 23. No one else with more than 15. Only 3 double-digit scores for the Pacers. Every time it seems like they play their best, they have a lot of balance. The ball movement's there. Lots of guys are stepping up. Today, I feel like the opposite. Almost nobody stepped up. And these players both played moderately well to break out of the situations that the Pacers were put in. But you guys have listened to this podcast enough to know that when a game happens and Siakam and Mathurin are the Pacers' leading scorers, they are good in situations where they can score in a slowed down situation where the game's all cooked up and not going the Pacers' way. However, that usually means the game was not played in the Pacers' style. This one was not at all. The leading topic for a lot of people was Tyrese Haliburton's play. After the game of his life, best postseason game he's ever had in Game 4. Best game he's ever had, period. 2 for 7, 8 points, 6 assists in this one. Not good enough. And we will get to him specifically as an individual in just a second. I thought that his game influenced the thing that I thought was the most alarming for the Pacers, and it was their starting 5 being just awful. Just awful. And Aaron Nesmith's dealing with the ankle injury. He admitted as much post-game that he's not 100% there. He had really short stints throughout the game. He only played a little under 16 minutes in this one, period, like at all. And the starting 5 as a unit only played 7 minutes and 20 seconds. The Pacers lost those minutes by 10 points. They went terrible. They couldn't stop the Knicks starters. They couldn't score at all. This was an offensive loss to me, but that group couldn't defend either. And Haliburton is the biggest part of this because he is the head of the snake. So that is where I think this is a Haliburton discussion, even though the story of the game to me was the entire unit really struggling. When Haliburton can't play the way he wants, everybody uses the word wrong. And he said it on the record. This isn't my opinion. This is his opinion. I agree with him. Everybody says Tyrese Haliburton needs to be aggressive. And they always point to his shot count and the record and all this stuff. And like, there's something to that. But when you ask Tyrese Haliburton about being aggressive, he doesn't see it that way. He sees it as getting 2 feet in the paint. When he can do that, he can get shots he likes. He can get his teammates shots they like. And the Pacers offense flows the best. 7 shots is not enough. I'll admit that. But I thought that was the more concerning part of this game. is that the Knicks had Mikal Bridges playing his best game of the series to me. His defense was fantastic. He was chasing Haliburton around very well off the ball, making it impossible for him to get open. The Knicks were doing a great job away from the play, making it hard for Haliburton to get the ball moving on a catch. And Haliburton doesn't have quite the wiggle to always beat his defender every single time. And so he couldn't quite get 2 feet in the paint like ever. There's always a guy shading. The screen setters for the Pacers were not setting good screens today. All sorts of problems with this. And when Haliburton can't get 2 feet in the paint, not only is he not going to have a great night, see the stats of his we just talked about. And again, I'll talk about him as an individual more later. When he can't get going like that, it makes it harder for the rest of the Pacers to do so. And they have some guys who are capable of breaking through that. Nembhard's been a playoff riser for a lot of this postseason. Miles Turner, up until very recently, has had a good playoffs. Obviously, Siakam just had 30. Nesmith had an awesome start to this series before his ankle injury. Good players. If they're getting worse shots because Haliburton can't create as well as he does at his best, it's tough for any of them to hum, especially when the Knicks are setting the pace of the game and scoring all the time. So the Pacers are pulling the ball out of the net over and over again. So what did that lead to? Aaron Nesmith on a bad ankle, 1 for 8. 0 for 3 on 2s, 1 for 5 on 3s. Miles Turner, 2 for 3. We will talk more about Miles Turner. Oh, this was the worst Miles Turner playoff game this year. 2 for 3. 4 turnovers, 3 fouls. Andrew Nembhard, 3 for 8. 3 for 7 on 2s, missed his only 3. 6 points for Andrew Nembhard, 8 for Tyrese Haliburton, 5 for Miles Turner, 3 for Aaron Nesmith. That is 22 points among 4 starters who have all at various times in this postseason played well. Pascal Siakam scored 15. It took him 13 shots to do it. He missed 4 free throws. He at least found ways to break the game up for the Pacers. He played well with the second unit. Him, Shepard, McConnell, Bradley, Mathurin groups were good. Sometimes Jarris Walker was out there. We'll talk about him. He was pretty good. But the starting lineup together was just terrible.
Stay up to date all year on the Indiana Pacers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Pacers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, there are 2 clear-cut candidates poised to lead the NFL in receiving yards. Which wide receivers are going to lead their respective conferences statistically? Locked On NFL host Tony Wiggins and David Harrison believe that Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown are the 2 most likely candidates to do it.
Well, there you go. I'm going with the guy in the AFC that actually did what I'm sitting here talking about today, and that's Jamar Chase to repeat all over again. And in the NFC, because of the new offensive coordinator, because people aren't just going to let them turn around and hand that ball off this year, I think Detroit's going to do what Detroit does in all of those games that they lose. They throw it too much, and that means Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to lead the league in catches and probably yards.
Yeah, so draft Amon-Ra St. Brown in your fantasy league, but maybe don't pick the Lions to win every single week is basically what Wig is telling you. Look, man, on the AFC side, I mean, you can't argue with Jamar Chase, right? Like Jamar Chase, he's that dude. He's the number one guy. Like I could try to go against the grain and maybe be like Tyreek Hill, maybe they have a resurgent year and the Dolphins start throwing the ball again and doing all these things. But, bro, it's Jamar Chase. It's Jamar Chase until it's not Jamar Chase, and I believe it's going to be Jamar Chase. Now, in the NFC, this is where we're going to get a little bit different, Wig.
Here we go.
Talked about Terry McLaurin, talked about how he's got a new running mate. It's going to take some attention for him. He's got a quarterback that's looking to take a step in the MVP race and all that stuff. Well, there's another receiver in the NFC East that has a new running mate, that has a quarterback that would love to get back in the MVP conversation. That, of course, is CeeDee Lamb, Dallas Cowboys. They got Pickens over there. Dak Prescott's trying to come back healthy. Obviously, everybody's got a lot to prove there in Dallas. Dak Prescott wants to prove that he's still the quarterback there because, look, there's a reality here at the end of this next season. So next offseason, 2026 offseason, the Cowboys decide to go a different direction at quarterback, maybe restart their whole system, all that stuff. Pickens is a free agent, all those things. So CeeDee Lamb, always one of the more productive receivers in the NFL when he's healthy and when he's available. If he has a fully healthy season and if Pickens can control some of his antics enough to stay on the field and become a threat for the Dallas Cowboys, I just don't know how you could defend both those receivers all the time. Each of those guys is going to eat, but I think CeeDee Lamb is still the primary. He's going to be the primary. There's no battle for number one there. It's CeeDee first. And like Jamar Chase on the Bengals, he might have his 1A or his 2, whatever you want to call him, but he's going to be the top dog, and I think CeeDee Lamb has a really good shot to be the leading receiver in the NFC this year.
Over the last decade and a half, Not that many players have gone back-to-back. Jamar Chase won the Triple Crown last year, but CeeDee Lamb had a great chance to do it. He couldn't do it for the Cowboys. Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in the NFL by most accounts, he's only done it once. The last player to lead the league in catches in back-to-back seasons was Michael Thomas, 2018-2019. The last to do before that, Antonio Brown, 2014 and 2015. He tied with Julio Jones with 136. You go back and you look at history, there have been great players, and I mean great players, who've never done it. Calvin Johnson, Andre Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald. We're talking about just in the last 20 years. Some of the best players of the last 25 years never did it. Randy Moss never did it. So, okay, you pick Jamar Chase. He's as good a chance as anybody, except the variance of this says that's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be somebody else. And in the case of Jamar Chase, you look at the fantasy implications, like from a fantasy football standpoint, you go, no, T. Higgins gets too many catches for that to happen again. It's just probably not. Plus injuries. Pick someone else. Pick someone else. The last Hall of Famer, this is crazy. The last current Hall of Famer to lead the league in receptions in back-to-back seasons was Sterling Sharp in 1992, 1993. Think about that for a second. It's been more than 30 years since we've seen a future Hall of Famer do it. If you think Jamar Chase is a future Hall of Famer, if you think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a future Hall of Famer, although Amon-Ra didn't do it, you got to pick somebody else. And finally, women's pro softball just got a major league boost. Major League Baseball is buying a more than 20% stake in the new Athletes Unlimited Softball League, marking the first time a major U.S. men's league has made a serious post-launch investment in a women's counterpart. With ESPN and MLB Network set to air games, big names like Jenny Finch and Jessica Mendoza involved, and expansion plans already in the works, the AUSL hopes this watershed moment will help softball fans and young players dream even bigger. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, do we see Game 7 in the East, or are we getting set for the 79th edition of the NBA Finals? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.